Music is blaring, the announcer is yelling, and the crowd is raving with excitement at the sold-out Beijing National Stadium. The athletes and coaches walk out onto the stage as their names are announced and displayed across gigantic screens to 80,000 avid fans, with another 36 million watching from home. Now, although the Beijing National Stadium was used in 2008 as a venue for many of the events in the Summer Olympics, this big crowd is actually gathered for something much more recent, the 2017 League of Legends World Championship. Now, many of you are probably wondering, what is League of Legends? Well, League of Legends is one of many esports or electronic sports that are competitive video games viewed and played by hundreds of millions of people every year. So, games like League of Legends, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and Dota 2 are just a few of the many games that are becoming part of the esports phenomenon. As explained by Sheila Lamb in her article, Esports as a Goldmine for Data Analytics, she found that in 2017, the global esports revenue was $696 million, with over 400 million people viewing it that year, and that by the year 2020, both of those numbers should at least double. Now, with such a huge viewership, and many of these athletes have become very popular with large fan followings, however, there are still many people who condescendingly call these athletes simply players and don't recognize them to be actual athletes. Many people do this because they simply don't understand what it takes to compete professionally in esports. By looking at the physical aspect of the games, as well as the intense time requirements and personal requirements of these athletes, it can be seen that esports professionals should be considered athletes just like their counterparts in traditional sports. So a big argument people use to say that esports aren't real sports is that they lack some kind of physicality. But this is untrue. Esports and traditional sports both have very important but different aspects of physicality. One very important part of esports is being able to control your character or avatar exactly how you want through the use of a keyboard and mouse or a kind of controller. So these athletes do this by having very complete control of their hands and fingers, as well as amazing reflexes. As explained by Anthony Schadl in his article Esports Explode, these lightning-fast reflexes are so impressive that the average esports athlete can perform about 300 actions per minute, as opposed to the average person who can only perform about 100. Though this is not the same as the kind of full-body physicality from a sport like football, it's still very impressive that these athletes have the finger, wrist, and hand dexterity to be able to perform such a remarkable number of actions per minute. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to esports than simply moving your hands and fingers really fast. Now, you guys can probably guess that professional basketball and football players spend quite a lot of time practicing, right? Well, the same goes for esports. These people are professionals, and this is how they make a living. So, let's see. So many of these people basically spend a lot of their time practicing, and as said by Yuri Xiao in his article, Professionalized Consumption and Identity Transformations in the Field of Esports, basically playing computer games for esports differs substantially from playing it for leisure in terms of skills required and also purpose played. These players are not your stereotypical video gamer who sits in their parents' basement doing nothing. They are professionals whose job is to play their game and play it very well. So, as said by Da-Young Jin in his book, Korea's Online Gaming Empire, pro game players have turned to workers, whose major functions are subject to ferocious work conditions, such as arduous working hours and unhealthy work environments. Many of these players spend up to 14 hours a day sitting down practicing their game, and obviously this is not super healthy. So to combat this, many teams have mandatory hours in the gym, as well as personal chefs that actually cook for the players and put them on diets to try to keep them in good physical condition. Now this might be kind of surprising, right? Like, people whose sole job is to sit down behind a computer screen and play a game have to spend the same amount of time training as a traditional professional athlete. Well, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. To be good at anything, especially a professional sport, whether it's a traditional sport or an esport, you have to spend a lot of time practicing to become successful and good at what you do. Now, traditional sports have been around for a long time, and they'll most likely continue to be a huge source of entertainment. Esports, however, are a relatively new phenomena that are only going to grow in popularity as time goes on. People who are unwilling to recognize esports in the same light as traditional sports are going to become increasingly uncomfortable as time goes on and esports just gain popularity and also become a huge source of entertainment. When ESPN recently featured a couple videos a few months ago of the League of Legends World Championship, these posts were met with comments such as, "This isn't a real sport and take this stuff down." As I said, these posts are probably made by people who don't understand the huge amounts of skill required as well as time and training required to compete professionally in esports. So hopefully, as time goes on, people will recognize these esports professionals as hardworking, dedicated athletes, just like the heroes from traditional sports.